looking for it, and okay, here we go.
So there's a sport that's played in certain agrarian parts of the world. You've probably never actually seen it in action, but it's actually sheepdog competitions. Now, this is actually a sport you can find in certain parts of Utah, believe it or not, but it's typically found in places like Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, and Scotland. The people who play it do this for a living. They raise sheep and they raise dogs to herd them, to keep them protected from wolves and to keep them from escaping and running away. Now, this is actually a pretty complex sport, one that takes a lot of training on the part of the dog. And what happens is the trainer will start at the bottom with his dog and the sheeps are on the other side. The trainer will then call to his dog certain commands, and his job is to take the sheep along the route through certain gates and to a corral. It's timed, and judges are also looking for things like, was the dog able to keep the sheep together? Was it too aggressive? How long did it take altogether? It's actually a really fun sport to watch. And there's actually a movie that has depicted this sport. It's one of my all-time favorites from the 90s. Babe. Babe is about a pig. This pig, to be particular. Babe is raised on a farm where sheep are the business. He's raised by border collies. And because of that, he starts to pick up some of their techniques. And the master is really impressed by how well this pig is able to herd sheep. So, of course, thinking logically, he enters Babe into one of these sheepdog competitions. Now, of course, when he gets there, Babe is the laughingstock, obviously. But Babe has a secret weapon, one that none of the border collies has. He speaks the language of the sheep. He knows their secret password, so to speak. And it's because of this that the sheep trust him. And instead of having to bark and nip at the sheep, they follow him. He guides them through the course perfectly until they get to the corral. Now, leadership is much like border collies and pigs, or this pig in particular. The difference is that a border collie is representative of the bosses of the world, and we've all had a boss, somebody who looks over our shoulders, who uses fear and intimidation to get what they want, whose main concern is power. Then there are leaders. There are the babes of the world. They lead us, they guide us, they're next to us, and they take us to a common goal. Now, I want you all to think for just a quick second here, and I'd like to know who it is that you're thinking of. Somebody that you think of in your life or in history that is a leader. Now, does anybody here have somebody in mind that you think of? Deborah.
George Washington.
George Washington.
Yes, indeed.
Now, what made him a leader as opposed to a boss?
Because he actually cared about his men, as opposed to everyone else.
Yeah, he cared about them. Tandy, what do you think? Who comes to mind?
I was thinking of Gandhi.
Gandhi. What makes him a leader in your mind?
He's not controlling or forceful. He's more like gives an invitation for those and finds peaceful ways to solve problems instead of violent ways.
Exactly. Now, in this scenario, you guys are all managers or team leads at doTERRA, which means that when you were applying for your positions, the people who hired you saw in each one of you leadership potential. They're not looking for bosses, they're looking for leaders, because leaders are people who guide their employees, the ones they supervise, onto bigger and better things. However, as John C. Maxwell said, the position doesn't make you a leader. Now, John C. Maxwell, he's been giving seminars and written book after book about leadership for most of his life. And one common thing keeps coming up, which is that something that Deborah said, he is to care about the people you're leading and to gain their respect. Now, each of you has unique teams. You have unique people on your teams with different needs and different wants. So gaining their respect is going to be different for each one of you. But one thing is going to remain in common, which is that you're trying to cultivate leadership in the people that you're training. You want them to one day get to where you are. A boss doesn't take joy in the promotions of those under them. A leader does. Now, each of you have unique talents, things that you've developed over time that have made you effective at your job. and it's time to pass those down. And as I'm saying this, some of you may be thinking, I already do this on the job. But for example, you have team captains. Have you ever made them a team lead for a day? Or maybe you have somebody on your team that really wants to become a manager. Have you ever assigned him for a few hours to shadow one of the managers here in the call center and to ask them questions and to learn, what does it take for me to get to there? Now, these are things that you can all do. But at doTERRA, things are a little bit unique because the people you're working with are often the same age as you. Some of them actually may have graduated with you from high school or college. And in rare cases, you're working with people who are much older than you. I was once on a team where half of the people were 50 or above. And I, the lonely 25-year-old, had to gain their respect. But I tell you, if you follow John Maxwell's advice, respect them and lead them to greatness, they will follow you no matter what your age is. Now, the other thing that's unique about doTERRA, and this is something that you don't have a lot of control over, are the days when it's so busy that all you can do is jump on the phones with your agents. Now, I've heard recently that you've had this buy one, get one free week that was a nightmare for everybody for a number of reasons, technical and leadership-wise. And during that time, all you were doing from 8 to 5 was taking phone call after phone call after phone call, and it's easy to burn out. And I have some bad news. There's not a whole lot you can do about that. But what you can do is be in the trenches with your team. They will notice your example. They will follow you, even if it is rough, and they may complain a little bit. Now, we've talked a little bit about being a boss or a leader, but there's actually one other category you want to avoid. If a leader is in the middle of the scale and the boss is on the other, on the other end is a friend. Now, some of you may be familiar with this character from the show The Office. It's a satire. Now, this may not look as familiar as maybe something like this. Michael Scott, who is easily one of my favorite characters of all time in comedy, is a joke. Yeah? See, for him, it's not about being a boss. And it's not even about being a leader. He just wants everybody in the office to like him. He wants to goof off, and he wants to be friends. But because of that, because he goes to the opposite end of the spectrum, he actually loses respect for from his people. And furthermore, they don't get anything done because he lacks that leadership. There is no goal in his mind that he's going towards. This doesn't mean that you can't be friends, but set expectations for your team and for yourselves. Doing so will put you into that happy medium and avoid being Michael Scott. Having said that, I would highly recommend watching this show. It's very, very funny. Now, the last thing is, while you may be interacting with your team more between the hours that you work, the fact of the matter is you don't stop being a leader after you clock out for the day or before you even clock in. You are their supervisor all day long. So perhaps on those days where all you can do is take phone calls with them, after the day is done, do you send them a text message? Tell them you're proud of them, that you really liked all their good work, that you're going to put in a good word for them if they're looking for a promotion. On the other hand, you could also simulate a plane crash. It's actually proven that that's going to build team unity. You laugh, but I'm actually only half joking here. There's a company in Connecticut called Survival Skills USA. And for a while, they actually developed this technique of simulating a plane crash in the water. Now, its original purpose was to train like Coast Guards and other first responders in situations like this. But what they were finding is that people who went through this actually came out with better team unity. So they started hiring their services out to employees of companies to go through this simulation and to learn to work together off the clock. Now, it's in Connecticut, and it's about $900 a person. So I don't expect any of you to go there. It's a pretty big deal. But there are things you can look to do with your team outside of the workplace. There's these wonderful escape rooms in Provo which simulate getting out of a room, and it takes teamwork to do so. Or maybe you just go get a milkshake at Sonic after the workday is over. Or possibly do a $5 movie night on Tuesday. All of these things build morale outside of the workplace. Because the last thing you want is for people to dread going to work. And you as leaders have a unique position to help them avoid that. Now, everything I've said here all rings back to the original point. Are you babe or are you a sheepdog? Are you going to lead them to a common goal or not? The big question you need to ask yourself after that is, do I want my team to replace me? Do I want them to be the leaders? Because I have to tell you, there is no feeling more satisfying to a leader than to see his own people become leaders themselves. Thank you so much.